Crossover episode here on the Locked On Podcast Network. A unique crossover experience for you guys, though. We're talking Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It makes sense. Trust me. Just stick with us right here as we get into this crossover episode on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys.
What's up, sports fans, Cowboys fans, Commanders fans, Buccaneers fans? Welcome to this special crossover edition of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm David Harrison, host of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Buccaneers podcast, and sitting on either side of me. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening, you're just going to hear their voices here in a minute. But we got Marcus Mosher and Landon McCool at Marcus_Mosher on Twitter and at McCoolBCB. I am at DHarrison82. They are the hosts of the Locked On Cowboys podcast, again, available on all platforms, free and available on all platforms, and on YouTube as well. We thank you for making all of our shows your first listen or your first view every single day. Gentlemen, let's kick right into it. The Dallas Cowboys, obviously the Washington Commanders, division rivals of the Cowboys, looking to reclaim their NFC East crown that the Cowboys unrighteously stole from them in 2021, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the second year in a row hosting the Dallas Cowboys, or playing against the Dallas Cowboys in week one. Let's start off with some general Dallas Cowboys stuff here. Let's go over the losses. Obviously, Amari Cooper is there. Randy Gregory is gone. 2 offensive linemen are gone. And Cedric Wilson, who I don't know if a whole lot of people consider him a significant loss, but to me, he kind of seems like he might have a significant role in what might be a little bit of a downside for the Dallas Cowboys. But where are those losses really sitting as far as the Dallas Cowboys 22 outlook really looks? And Marcus, I'll go to you with that question.
I mean, it's not great. I mean, that's a lot of players to lose in one offseason, right? No, but the Cowboys, they're hoping with their draft and a whole bunch of young players still in the roster that by the time we get to the end of the season, it doesn't look like big losses. They're hoping that Terrence Steele continues to develop at right tackle. They're hoping that CeeDee Lamb becomes the alpha number one receiver. They're hoping that Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong and Sam Williams can replace Randy Gregory's production, but on paper, yeah, this Cowboys team isn't quite as talented as it was at this time last year.
Yeah, and no, go ahead, Landon.
I was going to say, this Marcus and I, have been going back and forth on this, and we disagree a little bit on where they are versus where they were last year. Because, I think that if you're talking about at this point last year, I think that they're a better team simply because a lot of these young players have improved immensely. Now, the losses are severe. I mean, you listed them. I think that the thing that the Cowboys are pointing to is that it wasn't good enough, even with all of those guys healthy and there at the end of the year. They still didn't come. They came up short from what their goals were. So I think the Cowboys are hoping for some growth from the young folks and some addition by subtraction with some of these other folks.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a bigger difference too with this season versus last season is last year obviously you guys are getting Dak Prescott back from his injury, and while he had a ramp up and he had some camp time and all that stuff, that's significant. But I think it's a little bit different when you're coming off of a quote unquote relatively healthy season into a new season versus coming off the injury and having to get really back into the mix. So I think to a certain extent that can almost be viewed as a little bit of an addition and an improvement compared to last year's offseason. Which of these losses, though, Amari Cooper, Randy Gregory, I think are probably the sexiest names. But then, the Dallas Cowboys offensive line has been a juggernaut for a long time. So La'el Collins, I don't know how you guys felt about Connor Williams. I saw some mixed thoughts about him kind of entering the offseason. So if there's one or maybe even two, if you want to do a 1 Alpha, 1 Bravo, biggest loss from this offseason, which one would you say, Landon? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think if we're just talking about immediate impact and where it's going to be felt the most, I think the Cooper loss is the most. I think they have competent replacements at those other spots in the offensive line. Maybe Tyler Smith doesn't come in and play as well as Connor Williams. Tyler Smith doesn't come in and play as well as Connor Williams right away, because I think that's part of the issue too. Is that I think Cowboys fans in general kind of underrated Connor Williams because there was a lot of penalties and because a lot of these other things they felt like they needed to get rid of him. But I think a couple games of a rookie left guard maybe change their tune there a little bit. I think with Cooper, obviously he's an incredibly talented player. There may have been some personality stuff. There may have been some commitment stuff there. But losing a talented player like that is difficult. So kind of trying to make that up is going to be a multifaceted replacement plan, not just like a simple oh, this guy will play the Cooper role. I think it's going to be a couple different guys trying to take up that extra yardage and that spot in the offense. And it's going to be kind of it takes a village sort of situation to kind of make up for the loss of Cooper.
Yeah, it's Cooper for me, right? Like when Cooper's healthy and he's ready to go, he's one of the best route runners and best receivers in the NFL. And he allowed you to play CeeDee Lamb in the slot and move him around in the backfield or put him wherever you wanted to. And you still had an alpha receiver on the outside. Now, you can make the case, and Landon has made it for a while now, that Amari Cooper really wasn't that player last year because he was dealing with injuries and he just wasn't quite as durable as the Cowboys were hoping. But now you go from Amari Cooper to a rookie, Jalen Tolbert. You're hoping James Washington can take over some snaps on the outside. It's a huge loss, and they're certainly going to be putting more on CeeDee Lamb's plate, but not having that other guy that you can rely on a 3rd and 6 to get 7 yards, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned Jalen Tolbert, one of my favorite players out of the Senior Bowl, just because of the kind of the environment that he really entered into, flying from Los Angeles straight into Senior Bowl practice and still stood out. So obviously a member of your class that I'm looking forward to seeing. But you guys tell me about your Cowboys draft class, your favorite players you believe might have a real impact overall just for the season. Maybe it's a later start in the season, maybe not right away, but 2022 as the rookies go. Who stands out in this Cowboys draft class for you guys, Landon?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tolbert's the name that kind of sticks out simply because of the position that he's stepping into. I think with Tyler Smith, we talked about it. Like, I think they wanted to get an offensive lineman. We all kind of circled and put in pencil that they would get an offensive lineman. This is a guy that they think can play guard and slide out to tackle. But I think the guy that all eyes will likely be on, simply because of the high profile nature of the position, is Tolbert, and because he's coming in and has such big shoes to fill with Cooper. And it's not realistic necessarily to think that, he's going to put up Cooper numbers, though Cooper's numbers weren't exactly, impossible bar to clear from last year. I just think that it's still going to be a situation where Cowboys fans are going to say, okay, Cooper's gone and this guy is our draft pick. So, he's going to be the guy that's going to need to replace all that yardage. So there's going to be a lot of extra pressure. And you talk about, him coming from South Alabama and despite being a very mature guy and doing things like you mentioned, flying straight from the game in the UCLA, at the Rose Bowl to go play in the Senior Bowl and then not missing a beat. Yeah. Those things bode well for his leap, a very difficult leap to the NFL, but it's still a leap. It's still a rookie wide receiver. There's still going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform.
Yeah, David, for me, it's Sam Williams, the defensive end that they took in the 2nd round. Yeah. This is somebody that Dan Quinn basically handpicked, and he wanted to coach, and worked him out at the Ole Miss Pro Day. It seemed pretty clear that if he was available in the 2nd round, that's who the Cowboys were going to take. They need him to play a big role after losing Randy Gregory. They need him to come in and be able to provide some pass rush. I don't know how much you can expect from a rookie that's kind of changing positions after basically being like a 5 technique at Ole Miss last year, but they need him to come in and play a lot of snaps. So that'll be an interesting one to follow.
Absolutely. Some good names there. You saw me smile. Another name that I just love from the draft process. So looking forward to seeing all those guys. My listeners aren't going to be surprised at this. I'm a football fan before I'm anything. So I'm a fan of players all over the National Football League, no matter what logo they're wearing and no matter what logo teams are wearing, they're going to be on the field. And no matter who you're a fan of, you can make money off of what those teams do if you think you know what's going to happen. Week 1 odds are available right now on BetOnline, and our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. So find all your latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. Maybe you're like me, looking forward to seeing who gets to win the Stanley Cup this year. You can head over there and find information on that as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back now for segment 2 of this Locked On podcast crossover special. And it really is special because we've got 3 teams we're talking about here. The Dallas Cowboys, the 2 gentlemen to my right and left, if you're watching this on YouTube, covering those guys. And we thank you for making them your first listen or view every single day. If you're watching or listening to the Locked On Commanders podcast or the Locked On Bucks Commanders, I also appreciate you with my co-hosts, Chris and James, respectively, appreciating all of the Locked On podcast audience and family as we talk about some important stuff going on this offseason. Guys, let's flip real quick to the NFC East and the Washington Commanders kind of specifically. We've gone over some general Dallas Cowboys losses, additions, some impact potential, and we'll cover all this stuff again as we get through training camps and into the game weeks and do our specific crossovers for game weeks. But already, guys, D'Angelo Hall, specifically of NFL.com, and he might have a little bit of bias in this, but says that the Dallas Cowboys feel like they're most vulnerable to be the division champion from last year to maybe fall down and lose a grip of the NFC East. He said that on NFL.com recently. How close do you really think this race has gotten between the Cowboys and then the second place Eagles, third place Commanders, and even the last place Giants?
I mean, do you want me to start, Landon?
I mean, it feels like we do this dance every year. It's like that's
does.
the thing. I'll hop in because I have a feeling you're going to say the same thing I am. Is that every year it's a new champion with the NFC East. So I certainly don't come into the season plan on repeating, because that would be very much against the norm for the last, decade plus in the NFC East. So I honestly, I don't think it's that hot of a take to suggest that the Cowboys won't repeat as NFC East champions, because not very many teams have done it. Obviously we are biased, so we think that the Cowboys are a good team. I think it would be, crazy to suggest that the Eagles haven't had a great offseason and they haven't, closed the gap there. I think Marcus will probably tell you the same thing though. And this is the same thing I think we said last year. It's all about the quarterbacks. And unless you've improved your quarterback situation, you can improve your team a lot and it'll make a difference, but the quarterback is where the gaps get made up. So until if Hurts has made a huge jump, that's one thing. I don't know that he has. So I think we'll see exactly what Hurts is going to provide. And I think, same thing with Washington and New York. Has Daniel Jones improved? What's Carson Wentz going to look like? So like, these are all things that are all going to play into the NFC East race way heavier, I think, than some of the things that we kind of focus on with the draft and some of these other ancillary positions that get drafted and added to.
All right, David. So we did a show a couple days ago talking about what all the NFC East teams did this offseason. When we got to Washington, we both kind of just put our hands up in the air. We said, well, what's the reasoning behind the Carson Wentz trade? Why give up that many assets and invest into a quarterback that is going to only put you in limbo at best? Like, please explain what Washington might have been thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, with Carson Wentz, I kind of look at it as it's almost like revolving credit, right? Like it's there's a line there. There's an extent you can max that out if you really need to, but you can also cut it short. You can cut it up, throw it away, and get rid of it, and your life isn't really going to be hindered all too much. With trading draft capital, that's always what people hate to see, especially when you're talking about a team that looks like it's building something, not on the cusp of something. You look at the Rams trading picks for players are going to help you get to the Super Bowl. Now the Commanders don't look like a team that are in that position, but like you guys just mentioned, like specifically Landon, the quarterback position. I mean, that's still the most important position on the roster. And I even go back to teams like the Baltimore Ravens, who won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco wasn't the hero, right? He wasn't the ribeye steak on the plate for the Baltimore Ravens, but he didn't ruin it either. And that was very, very important. And what the Washington Commanders suffered through last year, you guys saw it in a couple of games, is they had a quarterback that quite honestly would do some good things, but at times would also shoot the team in the foot. And that's a problem. And, Tom Brady throws bad passes every now and then, so nobody is immune to it completely, but it's got to be the rarity and the whoa, I'm surprised that just happened versus, oh, it happened again, not totally surprised. So when you're looking for an upgraded quarterback, I think they got an upgrading quarterback. How much of an upgrade I think is going to be very important, but Washington can get out of it after this year if they really want to, or if they're kind of in a middle ground. He's not going to get paid a whole lot of money. Doesn't it just feel like they're wasting
time though, David? Like, it just feels like,
yeah,
okay,
to a certain extent. But when you miss on Russell Wilson, when you miss on Matt Stafford, they went after Matt Stafford last year. They went after Russell Wilson this year. I don't know if they were ever going to get into the Deshaun Watson conversation because of what's going on around the team, or if Deshaun even would have wanted to come to this team. And then I don't hold like Matt Ryan. I kind of stopped short of like faulting them for not predicting that Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield were also going to potentially become available, because I don't think that's really fair. I think obviously Carson's not the top option, but when you look at the NFL draft, like we just went through, I think he's the only option that really improves the quarterback situation in 2022. And it's a little short-sighted, I agree. But it's one of those gambles that you make in the NFL. Ron's known as a gambler. And if he hits, you know what I mean? If he hits 18 or 19, he might win the hand. if he craps out to flip games a little bit, sorry, casino guys, then obviously it's going to impact the team negatively. But I don't blame them for the risk, even if it's a little bit too many chips to push on the table for that risk.
I feel like, to use your blackjack analogy, though, that when they got Carson Wentz, it's like they're perpetually drawing 17, right? Like, what do I do? Like, it's not neither here nor there at times. So, I think that the only issue is that I've had a lot of respect for what Washington has done to the team building wise last 2 seasons. I felt like, especially, they've had a purpose. I think the thing that Marcus and I both commented on with the Wentz situation is that it just doesn't fit. Like, it doesn't fit with the rest of the moves that it feels like that are being moved, that are being done. And I think that ultimately what it is that we talked about it. You got to have a quarterback in this league, and teams that will make very smart decisions all over the rest of the roster. When it comes to quarterback, if you don't have one, even the best GMs in football become desperate, and they have to find out, they have to do something. And I understand the idea of doing something. It just feels like, it just feels like there's like it's not congruent with the rest of what the team building process is with Washington.
Because you're right, it's been very intelligent, really, for the most part. And I mean, and again, I always go back. They went after Russell Wilson, which obviously they would have been praised that they could have gotten him. It's just Russell didn't want to go to Washington. He says he didn't want to really leave, the West Coast as much as possible. Some people believe it, some people don't. It is what it is. I just think the team came into it, again, knowing that basically Taylor wasn't it, and they had to come in. And if somehow Taylor Heineke was starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders in 2022, he was going to have to take it from somebody who came in with a very clear advantage, and that's what Wentz has. Whether it works out or not, that's again, that's going to be the question. But I do like the rest of the moves. As confusing as that move was, and will basically continue to be until we really get to see him on the field. I'm looking forward to OTAs. Can't tell a whole lot from OTAs, but I can at least see him throw a ball to some of the receivers we're going to see him throw to in 2022. So I'm looking forward to getting to see that a little bit here next week. But for the time being, the other moves they're making are setting up this team to where if the Carson Wentz, gamble doesn't work out and they have to wipe the egg off their face and move forward, they're at least going to have a better nucleus around them to install that quarterback into, which I think is what will ultimately set them up for success potentially in the NFC East in the future. But getting back to 2022, guys, and Landon, I'll start with you. Way too early. I don't know if you guys made a record prediction. We made a record prediction on Locked On Commanders, but do you have a way too early divisional standings in a division that, like you guys said, really you can't pinpoint exactly where? I'll actually go first real quick, Landon, just to take a little bit of the pressure off. I've actually got the Eagles number 1. And then for right now, I've got the Cowboys just because Washington, look, until you prove you can beat the Eagles and the Cowboys, I'm not just going to give you that benefit of the doubt. So I got Washington 3rd, and Danny Dimes ain't it either. So I got the Giants dead last.
Yeah, I'm still picking the Cowboys. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts. I think he definitely will be better than he was last year, but there are some aspects of his game that I don't know that are going to improve, and that they're just kind of who he is, and that's not terrible. It's just I would call him the definition of an average NFL quarterback. So I'm picking the Cowboys, and I'm picking the Eagles right behind them. I'm picking Washington 3rd for sure. I mean, I like I said, the Carson Wentz thing is what it is. But I really like a lot of what Washington has done, and I think all of us were shocked. I mean, I very much remember having the crossover NFC East conversation, a little bit further along, but this time last year, about how scary that Washington defense was, and when we came out in the early parts of the season, it just didn't look like what we expected. I don't anticipate that for lasting for very long. I think this defense will figure it out. There's just too much talent there. Yeah. So I think that they will come out and they will surprise some teams in a couple games. They're going to steal a couple games. They're going to be a tough out. They may not have a great record. They may have a kind of a close to 500 record, but I think that they will be a very difficult team to beat week to week, certainly more than they were last year. And then New York, I think, much like Washington, I feel like I'm liking the direction that New York is. I'm finally liking the direction that New York is going in. It makes some sense. They have some plan there. They're still a ways away. They still have the same players that they had last year. So I anticipate them kind of bringing up the rear end in the 4th place, probably pretty badly, but with a trajectory that it's at least on track now that Gettleman's out of the way.
Yeah. And I'll go backwards. I've got the Giants at 4. I think Washington's pretty comfortably at 3. I think 7 to 9 wins feels about right for Washington this year. Probably going to be in a bunch of close games. And then it comes down to Dallas and Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has a higher floor just because that roster is so deep and they're so talented everywhere. But the Cowboys got the better quarterback, and that's ultimately what matters in a lot of these divisional games. So I'll pick the Cowboys to go, let's say 10-7. We'll have the Eagles finishing 9-8, maybe even 10-7, with the Cowboys having the tiebreaker. Washington 7-ish wins, and then the Giants pulling up the rear.
Yeah, going somewhere down there. Absolutely, guys.
All right, let's pause so we can tell you guys about Built Bar. They've got a fantastic new product out right now. Brownie batter puffs. They're absolutely amazing. Only 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 7 grams of sugar. Brownie batter puffs are the absolute perfect pickup, whether you're at the golf course, you're on vacation, on a walk. That birthday cake batter, 2 of my favorites right now. Please go check them out. Go to built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com and try out the new Brownie Batter Puffs.
All right, the Tampa Bay. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to flip to Bucks real quick and then get you guys in the break for segment 3. If you're going to do that. All right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys face off in week 1 of the 2022 NFL season, just like they did, guys, in week 1 of the 2021 NFL season. Now, this game's a little bit different, but let's hit those draft picks real quick. We kind of talked about the overall season, right? How impactful can these rookies be? Let's talk about week 1. Are there any rookies in this draft class that you think that, as it comes to hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, could be a surprise player? And just full disclosure, you guys have zero advantage in this because you've seen them do nothing outside of shorts and t-shirts so far. So not to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. What rookie might actually impact this game in week 1?
I mean, the Cowboys are hoping that Tyler Smith probably doesn't impact this game, right? He's going to be blocking Vita Vea up front, which is going to be terrifying for a first-year guard, basically playing a new position. But yeah, I think you're going to see Tyler Smith start at left guard. I think you'll see Jalen Tolbert be one of their 3 starting receivers. And then I fully expect Sam Williams and Jake Ferguson to play a lot of snaps. So the Cowboys are going to be relying a lot on rookies. Plus, I think we're going to have a rookie kicker, an undrafted free agent rookie kicker making his debut as well. So a lot of rookies going to be on the field for Dallas.
Yeah, I concur with what he said. I think Tyler Smith we're just hoping that Tyler Smith will be a better road bump than Connor Williams for Vita Vea. Maybe just a little bit more stout, maybe just a little bit more of a raise of the suspension when he runs over Tyler Smith. So yeah, I think that's all you can hope for when you're starting a rookie guard inside. And, I think the people that we just mentioned, Tolbert, Ferguson, Williams, those are the guys that are kind of all in the range to see some significant playing time. And then, like Marcus mentioned, it wouldn't be this game without it wouldn't be a Cowboys game at this point without having to mention the kicker. And we'll see exactly what a rookie drafted free agent could do to kind of help maybe seal a late kick and win the game.
Yeah, Bucs fans feel that kicker pain. Trust me, guys. They've been through that as well. Now, last time these two teams saw each other, 31-29 was the finish in primetime in Tampa, again, to start the 2021 NFL season. A closer game than a lot of people in Tampa expected, to be honest with you. It's week 1 again. It's primetime again, but it's in Jerry's world. So let's compare the feel of kind of finding out that this is going to be Dallas's first opponent this season versus last season. And we kind of talked about the Dak Prescott coming into the season healthy versus injured. Is that having an impact, or how is there a different feel this year versus last year? Or is it ultimately kind of just the same go get Brady and defeat him type of atmosphere?
It feels like internally, like inside Cowboys world, that it's the same. I mean, I think like last year we talked about, I think nationally folks were talking about Dak. They're talking about the shoulder, they're talking about the ankle, they're talking about, is he healthy? I think for Cowboys fans at that point, we have kind of been living and breathing it through training camp. We had an idea of where he was. I don't know that many of us were terribly worried about where things were, but that was kind of the conversation. I feel like this year, the kind of outside the Dallas sphere and inside the Dallas sphere is kind of lined up. It's the revenge game, or it's the rematch game. Everyone like enjoyed the game. I think even Cowboys fans that were disappointed that we lost were thrilled that we kind of proved ourselves against what we thought was one of the most talented teams in the NFC, and kind of proclaimed ourselves as in the mix for being a team last year. I think this is a similar situation. It's a rematch. The Cowboys proved that they can play with these guys. And I think they're looking to kind of use this again as a measuring stick, but kind of just in a different way than they were at this point last year.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. It's between good teams. I mean, listen, last year I think a lot of Cowboy fans overreacted too. That hey, the defense is going to be absolutely awful. Look at Brady tore right through him, and the Cowboys ended up having a pretty good defense. It's just Week 1 games have never been more meaningless, like in the history of the NFL. They really haven't. So if the Cowboys get crushed in this game, it's okay. It doesn't mean the season's over. If they beat Tampa Bay, it doesn't mean they're winning the Super Bowl either. So just whatever happens, don't go get too down for a pretty meaningless Week 1 game.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of I always compare it to, I'm an Ohio State fan, so I always compare it to, the Buckeyes. They always lose like an early or a late September, early October game against a ranked opponent, and then everybody gets up in arms when they're in the Final Four conversation at the end of the season because they lost a game. It's early season. So that's when, if you're going to stumble and learn some hard lessons, that's when you want to do it. Is Week 1 through 4, not week 16 through 18. Now, Dallas's defense, you mentioned it. Their rush defense, not the greatest last year, not the worst either, but not the greatest. New Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles has said that he does plan on his offense running the ball more last year or this year than they did last year. Leonard Fournette is back, but Ronald Jones, the backup, is now in Kansas City. So third-round pick Rachaad White out of Arizona State has, hopefully some promise that we haven't seen yet, but we're hoping to see. Keyshawn Vaughn, a couple years into his career. Giovanni Bernard, the veteran. What do you expect the Cowboys to do from either a schematic standpoint, Dan Quinn, or what have you seen in the roster formation to try to help secure that run game or run defense, knowing that teams like the Buccaneers are going to look to run against them a little bit more?
I mean, I think the Cowboys are going to be thrilled if they decide to run the ball on them, right? Because every time that Brady's handing off the ball to Leonard Fournette or White or Keyshawn Vaughn, it means he's not throwing it against them, right? So you're probably going to see a lot of light boxes, and you're going to see on 2nd and 8 them daring to run the ball, and you're going to see 5-6 man boxes. So I don't think the Cowboys are going to load up to try to stop the run. I really don't anticipate that at all. And we'll just see how long Brady and Byron Leftwich can stay patient and just keep, churning those 4 or 5 yard runs.
I think that the Cowboys defense is going to be, if there's one area where this Cowboys team, I think, got better obviously better than they were last year, it's stopping the run. I think if you just look at the personnel that were on the field at this time last year, one name that we have not mentioned from this draft class, and I'm kind of surprised that Marcus didn't mention right there, was John Ridgeway, who's become a very big Cowboys favorite just from some of the interviews he's given since he's been here. But I think as far as just a big, strong body that is hopefully won't be moved as much, the fact that the Cowboys added another one of those, they already had Quentin Bohanna from last year who will come back with another year under his belt. DeMarcus Lawrence will obviously be back. Fowler, I think, is going to be a little bit of a better run player than maybe Randy Gregory was. And I think some of these other people that are mixing in, including Golston, will give you better snaps. I think there's going to be improvement in the defensive tackle area with Gallimore, Oso Digizua, and even maybe Tristan Hill. So I do think, and again, Parsons having a whole season under his belt. They're bringing back Leighton Vander Esch. Hopefully, maybe we'll have Jabril Cox. I don't know. We'll see at that point. I actually feel like we aren't so sure about the pass rush. We aren't so sure about coverage, though we do know the coverage is similar to what it was last year. But the run defense, I think specifically for the Cowboys, I think has taken a step forward, kind of just based on the names we see on paper. So we'll see how that plays out and how the immovable object versus the unstoppable force works with Week 1 in the Cowboys run defense versus the Bucs run game.
All right, that is it for us today. We want to thank David Harrison from Locked On Commanders and Locked On Bucs for joining us. Check him out on Twitter at dharrison82. That's right, David, right?
Yep.
Yeah, check him out. Does fantastic work. We're still only a couple months away from Cowboys Bucs, but I'm sure we'll be talking again before that game kicks off. You can check out Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I am at Marcus Mosher. Checked out Lock On Cowboys on YouTube. Check out Lock On Washington or Locked On Commanders and Locked On Bucs wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. And we'll see you guys next time.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on. Locked on. Locked on Cowboys.